Okay, so in my first video, I did 10 mistakes that I often see at low stakes live from weaker players, and I thought that was a good way to start off the channel. I thought a good follow-up for that would be 5 steps for better poker study, because if we're making mistakes at the game, then we should look at ways we can get better. Again, like the first list, the order of this list is not particularly important. It's just 5 ideas to get yourself better at study. And there are obviously other tactics that I don't talk about in here, other things that are important, but I thought this was a good baseline. After this video, I'm going to be getting into some more deeper theory and some hand reviews and things like that. So I thought these were two pretty good baselines to get started that people could always refer back to if they wanted to see what the ideas were all about. So here we go. Number 5, figure out your goals. Goals in poker should be a combination of broader and more specific. A lot of people have the broad goals, whether they know it or not. It's get better at poker, or play 400 hours of this amount of poker this year, or things along those lines. And those goals are good to have, but really the more specific goals are going to help us study better, because these goals, the larger ones, are really going to happen by nature if we are studying. You're going to get better at poker. You're going to raise your win rate. Things like that are not really helpful goals because they are more side effects of the process than the actual end game. So more specific goal might be something like work on button versus big blind play in 200 big blind plus spots, or study out of position 3-bet pots, or there's plenty of goals that could go in the middle of this sort of extremely broad and more specific that you could work on and go from there. The more important thing is that you do have a goal structure, so you're not just sort of studying aimlessly, and you're not going from topic to topic. You're not really spending enough time getting better at specific things. 4, set specific study times. Studying should be structured and it should be set apart from playing time. I know there are people that try and study while they are playing. Uh, Online, there's too much information going on at once, and you're going to basically find yourself in the middle of sort of half studying and half playing your best, and neither of those are going to give you optimal results. You should also be studying no less than 1/3 of the time you play if you really want to improve. So if you play 3 hours a week, you should be studying 1 hour a week. I've seen this argued up to half. Obviously, more is better, but I'd say 1/3 is the bare minimum if you really want to get better at poker. And if you do play online, like I said, don't study while having the tables open. Separate it entirely. Now, live is a little different. There's a ton of downtime at live poker, and I do know people that can do some level of study while paying attention to the session. Most of them are already stronger players, and I don't really suggest this when you're starting out. I actually can't study at the table. It's just too much attention to too many different things for me, but I know people who do. If you find yourself with this ability and you can get some study time in there, I would sort of consider it like if you do an hour of study during table play, I'd consider it maybe 15 to 20 minutes of actual of your study time. I kind of refuse to believe that people are getting maximum productivity out of this while they're doing it. But if you can get some stuff done while you're playing and still not lose track of the game, then go ahead. Like you said, I don't do this, but there are people I respect who do. All right. Let's talk about tools for studying in poker. There's a ton of poker tools on the market. You don't need all of them, and I guess technically you could study without them, but I really don't see why you would put yourself through that. Um, Here's some of the more key ones that a lot of players use, and I'll put the links to their various pages in the show notes. Some of them are free, some of them are not. Equilab is free. I think and some of the smartphone apps might be. I'm not sure, but for various, they're all worth the money they cost. I can't vouch for all the apps, but the actual programs are worth the money they cost. But that doesn't mean you need all of them. So let's go down them. Equilab is something everybody should have. It's a free program that compares hand ranges and equities across the flop, turn, and river. So this is good for really getting an idea of how ranges match up. So what your opening range may look like against a calling range, what things look along those lines, and really running a bunch of different scenarios so you can start to get those numbers down and realize which flops are going to favor which players in different textures. And that's really important to have sort of a grip on as you go into a game. Flopzilla has some similarities to Ecolab, but it shows more about how a range interacts with its board texture. So basically, it'll show you the flop, and you can input what parts of your range are in, what hand you have, and it's going to show you equity expectations on that on that flop in reference to your range. So open it up, play with it. It's kind of best I can explain it, but it's a pretty intuitive program. You just got to run it a bunch of times and you'll get the hang of it. Hold the manager. If you play online, HUDs and databases are basically a necessity. The HUD's helpful. I know plenty of people don't play with HUDs. Uh, they're helpful, but really what's more important out of these is the tracking. They will save your hands and you can look at them later for study, and that's what's really going to help you get better. The HUDs obviously serve some purpose, but a lot of the American facing sites are anonymous anyway, so it's limited to how much use you're going to get out of them. So keep that in mind. But definitely for tracking your hands and for studying, you really want to have a huge amount of hands that you can go over. The smartphone apps, there's a lot of apps for the iPhone and Android that allow tracking. As long as you have something that tracks your bankroll management and something that lets you input hands, which can be the notes on your phone. I really don't care what you use. Just make sure that you're taking notes in games so you can look at them later. Don't trust your memory unless you know that your memory is amazing. My brother has a fantastic memory for hands. I don't. I write everything down. There's nothing wrong with that. Just write it down. It's better than forgetting. And then I really wasn't going to put this in here because I don't think new players need it, but solvers are absolutely something that are out there. They show us exact game theory optimal strategies for our entire range on any board and things along those lines. Now, solvers are an incredibly useful tool. I use them a lot. That being said, if you don't know what you're looking at or how the data should be used, you're just going strictly by what the solver says versus understanding why it's saying it, you can actually do yourself a lot of disservice, especially at low stakes games where the best strategies are not going to be optimal strategies. They're going to be exploitative. Now, I do think there's always a benefit to learning optimal strategy, but I wouldn't tell a 1-2 live player that they absolutely have to have a solver. So that's that. Now, more tools. Books. Everyone has asked what poker books are good, so I want to give a quick list of stuff that I think are good and people whose opinions I respect think are good. Theory of Poker is still good. It's limit hold'em, but there are a lot of ideas that are still good in there. It's still going to give you like a good groundwork for poker math and a good groundwork for what we are looking to do when we're in a game with other players. Easy Game by Seidman I still think is a good book. It's a good middle point book combining both theory and it's a more conversational tone than some of the stricter math books, but it won't teach you the basics. You have to have those down first. And then more advanced, I can't recommend Applications No Limit enough, but it's a complete math book. If you are not comfortable with the math of poker, this is going to be a hard place to jump in. It took me a while to get through the first time I read it because, frankly, it was probably a little too early. But I read it again, and it's been extremely helpful. I haven't read his new book yet, but I'm sure it's very competent. He's an extremely good writer when it comes down to just the straight theory of everything. All right, mix up your studying. Using one type of study regimen can get boring, which in turn will prevent you from maximizing your study time. And if you're bored, you're going to stop studying. You're not going to get through everything you need to get through. You're going to just kind of cut corners and do whatever you need to get through it, or just stop. So I like to mix watching videos, hand histories, talking to other people about poker, solver work I use, study theory and reading books, and just sort of mix that up. And however that works for you and what works best, I don't really care how you do it. Just make sure you're getting that study time in, that it's useful, and that it's useful time. I don't find it useful to jump from one thing to another, but if other people do, then that may be okay. But I really think it's important to, when you have a study session, have a topic and drill that topic so you can really focus in on that. Now, maybe that's just me talking. There's other people who can do it other ways, but I really advise that. And not every type of studying can be for everyone. If you don't get anything out of videos, or you get way more out of books, or way less out of books, and more out of just hardcore grinding the math, whatever you need to do, but get that work done. And if one thing is frustrating you for some reason, it's better to do something else that may not be your best studying tactic if it's better for you that day, because some progress is better than quitting in frustration. And I think this is really important. You have to be honest in your study. Do not dismiss topics because you think you already know them or they're below your ability. I review basics a lot because that's how my brain works. I have to drill things. Reviewing and mastering basics of poker is far more profitable than understanding these extremely corner case scenarios that show up every so often. I'll see newer players say, well, what about this? And they'll bring up this topic that it just never happens. It'll be like a six-way pot with some sort of weird three-bet situation, and they're wondering what they should do on the turn. And sure, it's nice to have an answer, but it's way more important to know what your c-bet range looks like on various board textures, which happens time and time and time again, than these weird corner cases that never happen. This falls up to know what you're studying. Take good notes on your game or use your online database, and don't skip hands that you might be upset with over yourself. We all make mistakes. There's tons of times in a poker game we do something, we go, ugh, why did I do that? Or we look at it later and it's almost cringing to how bad we played the hand. But it's really important that we look at those bad hands and the good hands so that we can really get as much information out of them as possible. Because if we make a mistake and learn from it, then the error itself is not a big deal. If we just keep making these mistakes and if we don't study them, you will keep making them. That's where the problem occurs. So just be honest. Don't kind of skip over hands and go, oh, no, I played that bad. I played that bad. I'm not going to look into that one. Look into it. See what else you did. And the other side of that is just because you won a hand doesn't mean you played it right. You want to look at the hands you won also, and make sure you maximized where you won, or maybe you just got you made a bad call and got there. These things happen. So really, where the benefit is, and the point of all of this studying is to deep dive into your own process, whatever your own thought process, and make sure that you are looking at how you're playing the game at every aspect, and you're not taking shortcuts, and you're really pushing yourself to get better over and over again. And if something's hard, you're not just giving up on it. And then focus on that, not the results. Results come very slowly in poker. They come over thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hands, or thousands of hours live, whatever the case may be. So focus on getting better incrementally and tightening up those leaks in our game, and you'll see yourself get better. But to do that, you absolutely have to be honest where your game is currently at. So I think that's 5 tips to helping you study better there. There's plenty more. There's great ways to study out there. There's probably some other study guides. But work on this, and going forward, you'll see your game improve pretty quickly if you use that time off the table as efficiently as possible. So like I said, if you like the video, like, comment, by all means, subscribe. I always appreciate it. And my next videos are going to be more focused on, in-game specifics, whether that's hands or theories. I'm still looking into some topics that people are suggesting to me, and I will go from there. Thank you for watching, and have yourself a good day.